always seem impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamiza Ali. Our topic tonight is parliamentary standing orders, the protocols, and conduct of debates. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narine from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Professor Muniram Budu.
Hello, Timisa.
Our guest tonight is the Speaker of the Guyana Parliament, the Honorable Manzoor Nadir. Good evening and welcome, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Good evening,
Professor
Professor.
Budu, please go ahead.
Okay. I welcome our viewers to today's program with the Honorable Manzoor Nadir. He is the Speaker of Guyana's Parliament and former leader of the United Force Party, and also he was a former Minister of Labour in a previous PPPC government. As a reminder to our viewers, the objective of this program is to seek clarity and facts on developments in Guyana through constructive dialogues with government leaders and other decision makers. The intention is to inform the diaspora and to help promote Guyana to the world. Viewers, we would like to get your question. Please send in your question to the speaker. We will request the speaker to answer as many questions as possible within the last 10 minutes of the program. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming again to this program, and I look forward to you educating our viewers who are not familiar with parliamentary matters and also address some parliamentary issues in the public domain. So let me start, Mr. Speaker, that you had a new session of Parliament that started recently after the re-election of the PPPC party to govern Guyana. One of the acts of Parliament is to select or elect, you can inform us of the correct terminology, an opposition leader. Tell us about the process and what issues arose from the selection or election of the opposition leader in the current session and how you dealt with these issues.
Good evening, Professor. Good evening, Shamiza. Good evening to our listeners and viewers. First, let me take this opportunity to wish everyone Ramadan Mubarak, Happy Lent, and we're in the period right now of Pagwa to all our Hindu brothers and sisters. May you celebrate this holy season with liveliness, color, and renewed energy. So, the leader of the opposition has attracted much attention, especially the election of the current leader of the opposition. The constitution is quite clear, and the constitution says the leader of the opposition shall be elected by the non governmental members of parliament at a meeting convened by the Speaker of the National Assembly. So, Parliament met on November the 3rd, and we had the leader of the opposition elected a few weeks ago. Now, a couple of issues here. The Constitution is quite clear, and that is the supreme law of the land. And the Constitution says that the non governmental members of Parliament shall, at a meeting convened by the Speaker. Now, there is nothing in that Constitution which says the Speaker must hold this election, the day after Parliament first convenes. It gives no timeline when the Speaker shall convene this meeting. Many different persons have their own opinion and their convenient opinions. For me, it has been an issue of convening that meeting because of a number of reasons. But principal among which is the integrity of the House. Being the person who was the front runner, whose party had the largest majority in the opposition, would most likely be elected, and that person is facing extradition to face charges for which there has been a grand jury deliberating and indicting that person. I took some time to consider holding this meeting. In many other Westminster systems, the leader of the opposition is like in the UK would be chosen by the Crown based on their opinion of who commands the majority of support or the most support, I shouldn't say majority, in the opposition. And that also goes around our Westminster Commonwealth countries. Some countries don't have a leader of the opposition per se. In your case, you may have a minority leader in the House, but is that person the official opposition leader of the opposition in America? Some people don't have it. In countries where a party would have won all the seats in parliament, like again what happened in Barbados, the prime minister may have to designate somebody to sit in the opposition. So a lot of um, hullabaloo has been made over the leader of the opposition and the election of that person. At the same time, that decision rests solely with the speaker, and he's bound only by the Constitution. So in the end, I had to follow what is our supreme law, the Constitution. And so it took some time. You and I know you may receive a paper from a student, might not be the brightest student, but sometimes the point raised in that one paper may leave you to delay marking all the papers because many times in your system, I know you mark your students against each other rather than a, a bar is set and who gets a certain percentage. So this is one of the reasons it took almost 2 months to get that meeting organized, including that I was away from the country on international duties on two occasions. Um, and I was still seeking a lot of opinion. I importantly went to India at the Speakers of the Commonwealth Conference in January. And I had the opportunity to engage a lot of other speakers. And in the end, we had to go with what our law says, and especially our Constitution, what that Constitution says.
Mhm. Now, there is no a timeline written in the parliamentary rules for this to
Well, in the
happen.
Constitution,
Or
this is
it
the
is your
Constitution.
prerogative, right?
Yes,
For
yes,
the time. So you decide that, and you gave a lot of consideration to the existing situation, and it took some time. Right?
yes.
That matter is now settled, is it?
It is. It is now settled
Mhm.
definitively.
Yes. Now, what parliamentary rules are in place should the opposition leader be charged with an offense and may be found guilty?
The Constitution is also quite clear. If you're convicted of a criminal offense, you can't be in Parliament. That's quite clear. So we don't have any question there again. That's one,
mhm,
right? If for
mhm,
some reason the opposition leader is not able to attend parliament, perform his duties, then one third of the members of the opposition can write to the speaker and ask that there be a new election for a leader of the opposition. So
mhm,
once I get a request,
mhm.
then I have to proceed with holding another election. You might have the same person again,
Right.
right? It doesn't
Mhm,
specify. But there are
mhm,
two things operating. There is within our rules the opportunity for one third of the persons in the opposition or the non governmental members, as we have framed it, to raise an issue for an election. And then, if a person is convicted, then their their seat would now become vacant.
mhm. So I just want to be clear, so viewers are very clear about this. This request must come from the non-governmental people in parliament,
Yes,
correct? And not
yes.
not government. Government
I'm not the
ministers
government.
don't have nothing to do with this, right? And
Right.
that request has to come to you as speaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Shamiza, Professor,
Mm,
I've been around quite a while.
mm, mm,
Now, probably a little institution onto itself. Um, and I went through the constitution reform process in the late 90s to 2000 when we amended many of these provisions in our constitution.
mm,
And it used to be that the president would designate the minority leader.
mm,
The president would
right.
designate the minority leader, as happened prior to 2000. And we looked at it, those who were involved in the process, and ultimately the Constituent Assembly, which was the members of parliament,
Mm,
had to finally decide on the issue. And
mm,
it was said that the non governmental persons, so you may have 15 parties in parliament, you could have eight of them being in government. So the
mm,
eight, and those eight may not all belong to the party of His Excellency.
mm,
It's the non governmental, the ones who are not in the government circle, to make that decision. And that was a big change. I
mm,
haven't seen that, and I've been around a while. I haven't seen that permeating many other countries.
mm. Mr. Speaker, the budget debate is Parliament's most important annual exercise.
Yes,
From the Speaker's perspective, what must happen procedurally for those debates to be fair and effective?
I don't know what is fair, and
Mhm,
um, the speaker has to rule without fear or favor,
mhm,
and he has the standing orders which he has to rule by. He just
mhm,
can't make up any rules as he goes along. Our standing orders are the rules of the parliament. It's online. Anybody
mhm,
could just standing orders of Guyana will pop up, and anyone can read it. So those are the rules which I have to govern by.
mhm,
If we do not have a particular instance that occurs, I am guided by the Bible of parliamentary procedure in the Westminster system. And that was done in the 19th century by a clerk of the House of Commons, Erskine May. And unto today, that remains the reference tool where parliamentary procedure is
mhm,
concerned. So if it is silent in our standing orders, I can refer to May's. And um, if there is still not enough clarity, I can go by the convention which is used by our parliament and some other parliaments. Convention,
Mhm.
right? So you have a set of criteria, including your standing orders, your rules, and if it's in a court, it'll be the rules of court,
Mhm.
which you are guided by. And you apply those rules without fear or favor. I
Mhm.
tell people also sittings of the National Assembly are not sittings in a church. We're not in a church. And while we want to have everybody behave with church type decency, it doesn't happen. And then you have to exercise fairness. You have
Mhm.
to exercise fairness. So in every parliament, this is politics. There is
Mhm.
militancy. There is some disruption. There is heckling. If it gets out of hands, there are disciplinary procedures outlined in our standing orders. And if it gets extremely difficult, uh, persons can be referred to our privileges committee. And that
Mhm.
committee will decide on the penalty or penalties for persons disrupting the good order of the house, lying on a member in the house, and things like that. So you could
Mhm.
be referred to um,
Mhm.
the privileges committee, and that committee does sanctions. If somebody
Mhm.
in parliament is disruptive at the time, the speaker can call on a minister to move that the person be removed from the parliament for the rest of the sitting and things like that. So you
Mhm.
have the rules which you can which you have to execute in the house. You have some sanctions which are at your immediate disposal, and you have also a process where a person could be heavily penalized for serious breaches of parliamentary procedure, misconduct.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, Mr. Speaker, there has been discussion in the public domain about
Mhm.
members reading prepared speeches during budget debate. How do the standing orders treat this, and what standard does the Speaker apply in practice?
Right. We are no longer in a high school debate, and even in a high school debate, you're not supposed to read. This is a standing provision that you don't read. You can refer to your notes, but you cannot read. And look at the House of Commons, where we take all our examples from. People sit, the Prime Minister during questions time might carry a folder um, to the dais where he's going to speak from, but they will speak. I recently had to do a presentation in the Lok Sabha in India for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And they referred back to our rules at the CPA that you can't read your presentation, right? You have to do a presentation. You can refer to your notes, right? So
Mhm.
the reading is something which has been long standing in parliaments, in debates where a person just don't read a prepared speech because you're coming there to sincerely represent people, consult with people. And you and I know, in your case, Lisa would have gone through this. When you tell your class, we're going to discuss the subject of Ramadan tomorrow. It's not for them to come and write notes and read out what the research or what AI generated on Ramadan.
Mhm.
Is for you to come and have a discussion, if you have prepared for the subject, if you have consulted with your constituents, you will be able to repeat that with conviction, with sincerity,
Mhm.
and convince. Because in Parliament, you're supposed to convince people to your view, to your motion that's before the House,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
the question that's on the floor. So, reading takes away from all of that. That
Mhm.
Professor Buru could have the Professor Buru party with 15 members, and he writes speeches for 14 of them, and they sit there and regurgitate all 14 of these speeches,
Mhm.
right? So there are some other considerations too, but by and large, I consider those are the the positiveness in making a presentation rather than reading from a prepared text. And I'm
Mhm.
saying prepared text because you may not even have to write it.
Mhm.
So that doesn't give the people who you are representing in the National Assembly the just representation that they deserve.
Mhm.
The other issue, if a person continues to read, right? Now the speaker does have some uh, powers at his disposal. And if I find a person reading and reading, and in spite of the cautions that they still read rather than refer to the notes, I can I can bring the person's presentation to an end. I can
Mhm.
say I've given you 5 warnings not to read. It's against the standing orders, and more particularly, it's not fair to those persons you are supposed to be representing to the best of your ability. I think you're
Mhm.
not doing your constituents,
Mhm.
neither the House, justice, and I terminate the presentation. Or I terminate the reading, I should say.
Mhm. Mhm.
I could do that. But again, you know, you and I have traversed many experiences because of the time we've been here. And regardless of the might a person has, that always has to be tempered with mercy.
Mhm.
So it's not always you're going to exercise wielding the
Mhm.
heavy hand
Mhm.
or the big stick.
Mhm.
So patience might be one of the tools that some people don't have, and somehow I've been gifted with quite a bit of it.
So if I summarize it, tell me if I'm wrong. It is not really issue of reading itself. It's just that it has negative impact on
No, but
genuine
it's
debate.
yeah. I was giving you some rationale from my own perspective, but the
Mhm.
rules
Mhm.
are quite clear. You cannot read in the house.
I see. Mhm. Now, Mr.
Professor
Speaker,
Buru,
yeah,
can I ask a question
yeah,
before
go
we
ahead.
move on
Yeah.
on this specific topic?
Mhm.
Mr. Nadir, in the last budget, there were
Mhm.
quite a few outbursts. We had a lot of name calling, and
Mhm.
it was a lot of tantrums. As Speaker, was there any disciplinary actions taken or any penalties to those perpetrators?
The answer is no.
Okay.
Many times you warn, you hit the gavel, um, you you know you caution, you caution, you caution, and as I've said, you in the end have to exercise a considerable amount of patience. So no, I did not apply any of the rules that will call for a person to be expelled or disciplined.
Can you give us an example of a case that might warrant such an action by you?
Yes, I can. Um, I can. I think it was about 4 years ago, we had an incident where some members of the APNU in opposition launched an attack on the authority of Parliament, which is symbolized by the mace. And they they had a violent tug of war with them and I on the mace and some of my staff. So those persons, I think there were about 8 of them, they were taken to the Privileges Committee, and many were suspended for a number of sittings, between 4 and 8 sittings. Um, so yes, that was the one example during my time where persons have been uh, sanctioned, penalized, suspended from the National Assembly. And when you're suspended, there is no pay. You can't do anything in the name of the National Assembly. You can't come even within the precincts of the National Assembly until that suspension is over.
That is good to know. Thank you very much. Proceed,
I hope I,
Mr.
I hope those who are in Parliament now take note too.
I,
Yeah.
I hope they watch this or somebody will send this to them so they have an idea.
Yeah. Speaker, I
Yes.
want to go back to the same point Shamiza raised. Budget debates are often heated. At point this debate, crosses the disorders. You had example you gave there, and I've seen in some other parliaments report in which people actually fist fight, right, and
Yes.
do a lot of damage. Are there any example in the standing orders that said this is what constitutes disorder, or is that a determination you have to make?
Yes, we have, as again I will say we have, um, you're not supposed to interrupt a person who is speaking. A
Mm,
person who is speaking is supposed to be allowed to make their presentation without interruption.
mm,
An interruption could be heckling, could be
mm,
a number of distractions. So the standing orders are quite clear, giving the power to the speaker to maintain good order in the parliament. Um, and I'll pull those up shortly and give you
mm,
some of those rules. So in the end, if you have an unruly parliament that's out of control, then that's sole responsibility you could put on the feet of the speaker, right in the speaker's lap, because the
mm,
speaker failed to. And you've seen a couple of times in this sitting, if you would watch most of it, that I actually suspended.
mm,
I stood up and I said, let's take a suspension, which is one of the tools that speakers implement to get sides to cool down. And if when you test the waters and you call the whips and there seems to be still hostility, you ask for 2 persons from the government, 2 persons from the opposition to meet in your chambers, and then you discuss the way forward. So this is unacceptable on both sides. If it persists, these are some options I have. You guys have to decide if we're going to continue on the unruly, disruptive behavior in the house, and then I to decide what actions I will take to keep the good order in the
mm,
house. So you knock the gavel for warning.
mm,
You'd call a person name, uh, honorable member, Mr. Boodoo. Your outburst is unacceptable. I'm giving
mm,
you a first warning, right?
mm,
You know, and of course, members will test your limits. They
mm,
will push your button. They
mm,
will run down your batteries, as the young people will say, right, Shamisa?
mm.
Yes, of
And
course.
just to push you. So
Uh-huh.
you have to deal with all of that. And sometimes you have to take the public criticism that the thing is disorderly, but you want the business to
Mhm.
continue because the end is that the business of the house should be completed.
Mhm.
We should not allow um, those characters who want to disrupt, delay, and postpone the business of the house by such behavior.
Mhm.
So
Um,
we have had many of that even in this sitting.
mhm.
Uh, Even on the government side, if a government minister on the floor and I feel he's coming off, I would politely say to that minister, um, Honorable Minister, don't you think this is a good time to take a short suspension?
Mhm.
Right? You know, so there are many ways which you can employ outside of using that heavy hand and that rule book. It's not always whipping a person with the rule book every time.
Mhm. Right. Well, thank you very much. So far, it's been very educational. Shamisa, can we take the break now?
Absolutely, Professor Budu.
Mhm.
We will be right back.
Sure.
We are back. Professor Budu, please continue.
Yes. Um, how do you ensure that rulings, especially during tense budget debates, are applied consistently, regardless of which side of the House a member sits on? Because some people may say, okay, the speaker is giving more privilege to the government people or the ministers, uh, and that kind of criticism, right? Explain to our viewers, right, what you really do to prevent this.
Yes. So you have to, again,
Mm,
apply the rules fairly,
mm,
unbiasedly. And you'll always be accused. As Winston Churchill said, if you stand
mm,
in the middle of the road,
mm,
you will get run over. And some says in order to keep the house straight, you got to put lashes on the left side and the right side. And that is what we do. So in the assembly, I'll repeat, and standing orders 46, 47 speak to those. Uh, the speaker in the assembly, and then if there's a committee, the chairperson shall be responsible for the observance of the rules of order in the assembly.
mm,
And their decision upon on any point shall not be open to appeal,
mm,
except if you bring a substantive motion to the floor. So
mm,
that's how powerful chairpersons of parliamentary committees and the speaker are. So we have to be able to ensure that we're applying the rules fairly and on both sides. We had some instances where some ministers, and my good friend, I'm not ashamed to say good friend, Minister of Agriculture, Zulfikar Mustafa,
mm,
the Honorable Minister of Local Government, Priyamanik Chand, was making a presentation, and she is responsible for defending the agricultural budgets for the region.
mm,
In our system, the Minister of Regional Development for each one of the 10 regions controls a small budget, one for education, one for agriculture, and one for health, because that was part of the decentralized system that we had. And so Minister Manichan was on the floor, and it was an agricultural matter. And Minister of Agriculture, sitting, intervened, put on his microphone, and was answering somebody in the opposition. And I had to say, Minister, there's a way you do it, and what you did is not the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you must rise in a point of order. If somebody is telling an untruth and you have the facts, you can rise on standing order 40A, and I will allow you to correct the untruth or the irregular statement made by the person in the opposition. I have had to say about 5 times the leader of the opposition that the Honorable Minister Teixeira is right. There is the standing orders which says you should not read your speech. Please desist from reading. Right? So some may say that maybe uh, I am too lenient in allowing him or for giving him 5 warnings. But what do you do? What do you do? In any
Mm-hmm.
house, those in charge do exercise warnings. And as some of our parents used to say, you're getting a
Mm-hmm.
long rope, right? And for me, I have managed that way. Penalties and harshness is a last resort. And we are
Mm-hmm.
not dealing with children. We're dealing with people who have put themselves up to represent our people. And each member of parliament represents over 7,000 people. And your behavior or misbehavior in the house reflects on people who voted for you, who could vote for you, and will open yourself to criticisms from the people who didn't vote for you. So you're in there not only to represent people, but to win hearts and minds and to serve the people so that we can deliver a better life for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mr.
And
Speaker, the
go ahead.
standing orders that you have, I think it's a Westminster style standing orders. Getting it. Those were date back decades with amendments that I know Guyana made over time. Which areas most urgently require reform? Debate rules or disciplinary powers, committee procedures, or something else? What you think?
Our standing orders, unlike many
Mm-hmm.
from the Commonwealth Caribbean, have gone through a lot of changes. I think it was around, um, can't have the year, but we had a review of our standing orders, um, and that committee was led by then
Mm-hmm.
Foreign Minister and Member of Parliament Carlin Rodriguez. And you had, less than 20 years ago, you had a complete, a complete review of all of the standing orders that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And we even have a manual on it out of that process.
Mm-hmm.
So while they may have existed, some of them for a long time, we had a total review um,
Mm-hmm.
in the life of a parliament, I would say, not so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
What one which there were dress codes. You must wear somber colors. Your shirt jacks must have 4 pockets. They, I think we saw that as one that needed um, some changes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we also said that on national occasions, you could wear national wear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have dealt with that, and now you'll see people in ethnic wear, national wear, right? Shirt jack,
Mm-hmm.
shirt jacks with two pockets instead of four.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I still wouldn't allow you to wear a jacket without a tie,
Mm-hmm.
right? It looks too casual.
I see.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, you'll see our women have hijabs on.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done some changes there.
Mm-hmm.
There is not standing orders per se, but phrases, words that have been I should say nomads, but that are not allowed. Corruption.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say Budu look like a sensi fowl,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can't be insultive. You can't call people hypocrite. You can't mislead, right? And there's a
Mm-hmm.
long list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can easily say I came and inherit that list,
Mm-hmm.
right? I imposed those restrictions because the moment we start allowing many of the phrases and words that are disallowed, hooligan, you know what we will get. If
Mm-hmm.
it's disruptive now, imagine if we start using some of those words. So personally, I accept the blame for banning many words, though I
Mm-hmm.
came and reach it because I'm enforcing it. And I will still enforce it unless the Standing Orders Committee meet and give me a new set of words
Mm-hmm.
that I can disallow.
Mm-hmm. And that
So
standing order meet regularly. Committee meet regularly.
it could meet basically
Mm-hmm.
whenever somebody moves something. It's
Mm-hmm.
a standing committee, so
I
it's
see.
established, and
Mm-hmm.
then persons can move
Mm-hmm.
motions that matters be referred. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, a motion is coming up that a particular matter regarding the press will will probably go to the Standing Orders
Mm-hmm.
Committee. But as you
Mm-hmm.
know, Professor,
Mm-hmm.
you've been around a while. You know, many times when you criticize the cushion in the chair as being too soft and you sit in it, you don't want to change it either.
Right. 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 That's true. Now, media access to parliamentary proceedings have been publicly debated. You
Right?
know, what rules govern media access and how do they align with, say, maintain order and dignity in the House? Put it that way.
Right. And this has been one of the main um, area of media mischief. Is all I can call it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Media mischief.
Mm-hmm.
And let me read what the rule on the media is. The rule says in Standing Order 110, the Speaker may grant a general permission to the representative of any media to attend sittings of the National Assembly under such rules as the National Assembly may from time to time make. If such rules are contravened, such permission may be revoked. So that standing orders put a lot of authority in the hands of the Speaker to deal with the media. And what has been the practice in our Parliament? Speakers would meet with the clerk and say, well, look, we only have 5 chairs for the media. The place is just too small. And when it was only one government, Sharma, and Evening News, and the Chronicle, and the Stabrook, everybody could have sat at the media table. But now they claim to be 25 accredited media houses.
Mm-hmm.
So what had been the issue was when we had COVID, we had restriction. Even Parliament didn't meet I conducted many sessions virtually. We didn't meet physically, sorry. And we had a limited number of seats. I think it might have been 3 seats
Mm.
for the media. I call them the non state media.
Mm.
Some people from the media call themselves independent media. And you and I know how independent some of these media houses are. So the president of the Guyana Press Association and one other member, the president then was Nazima Ragobir. They sought an audience with the speaker and they said they would like more seats. And we came down to 5 members of the non state media can sit in the National Assembly and they can be accompanied by 2 still camera persons to take pictures. They can walk around and from the passageways, the stairways leading to the assembly, they can take pictures. That was 7 persons. We never stopped providing a full feed to the media because what we did was we set up within the precincts of the National Assembly, we set up a special area with television, and any accredited media person can sit there and observe. We also have that feed live, and you guys watch it live. Live. Yes, sometimes the feed would drop now and then. And then we try to give them copies as fast as we could. So the issue of unrestricted access is not to the happenings of Parliament. They want unrestricted access for 25 people to sit in the assembly, which now has less than 100 seats. And I have requests from school children. I have to accommodate the staff of ministers. I have to accommodate the staff of parliament. So we never stopped the media from getting a feed. We never stopped providing lunches for 25 people. We never stopped providing a seat for them to have a secured area to observe from. We never decide which 7 non-state media will sit in the assembly. The Guyana Press Association does that, not us. We give them the amount of seats. Now, some of them are saying, as long as they have been covering Parliament, but sometimes some of them used to be a few of them at the table in the old chambers.
Mhm. I see.
But they made this
Now,
big issue that you
mhm,
have this monster in the chair
mhm,
that has curtailed media rights, that has stopped the media from coming in. We have 4 video cameras positioned in the National Assembly, and because of the restriction of the access to one passageway, Honorable Member Parliament Coretta MacDonald slipped. If you saw that incident, it was just as she was moving
mhm,
sideways,
mhm.
fell and broke her leg in 2 places.
Hmm.
Yes.
Oh,
So imagine me now putting 8 cameras in that passageway because that's the only place the 8 cameras could go. They can't go anywhere else. It's in the passageways,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So, you know, yes, the speaker has had a lot of negative press from some sections of the media, especially the hostile media, right? And some people don't respect the decorum of the house. Yes, the speaker might nod off and sleep for a minute, and they'll take that picture and send that around the world. No,
mhm,
that's like if you're walking with your underwear and your granddaughter's
mhm,
or
mhm.
grandson taking a picture and sending it all over the world. you know, and one questions, their motive.
Mhm.
So a lot of raves and waves have been made about this undemocratic speaker that's cutting out transparency, that we, the media people, are the true representatives of the truth. All media people work for one thing, their bottom line, their profits.
Mhm.
That's what they work for. And if they can't sustain that, they go out of business, like one newspaper is going now,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? You pick up any one of the reporters anywhere and say they're working for truth. They're working for, it's a job they're doing for a private dollar,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
I never
But
see a media person
yeah.
who's
Mhm.
been crowned a prophet yet.
Yeah. But Mansoor, one of the ways to tackle this issue is by
Mhm.
education, is about messaging, right?
Yes, yes.
And you said that Parliament goes live and people can look at it, but I could guarantee you that many citizens understand why the speaker intervenes, for example, right? Admitting that you are biased. Should there be, is any parliamentary education or civic education be given to Guyanese and how parliament works, how the constitution and so on? Is that uh, an education that should be done?
Yes, we could do it,
Hmm.
but that kind of education is boring stuff.
Hmm.
Unless you could package that in an attractive and interesting way, you're just reinforcing boredom.
Hmm.
You know, look, your grandchildren, I'm sure, Shamiza, I don't know how many
Hmm.
kids you have and how old they are, but these kids get their messages on every aspect. Like my 12-year-old grandson last year was saying, "Oh, tomorrow they're releasing the Epstein files." I said, "Well, you know about Epstein, right?" And he could give me the whole thing, but he has his own way of
Hmm.
getting his messages.
Hmm.
And we could do it. Nothing
Hmm.
prevents the speaker
Hmm.
from doing an education program.
Hmm.
And I'll take you up on it.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
but
something we should do. Go through
yeah,
standing orders.
I'll be happy
talk
to help.
about it. Yeah.
I'll be happy to help. Yeah.
And one of the things which we did was trying to bring Parliament closer to the people
Hmm.
by doing these youth debates, the youth
Right.
parliament, by
Hmm.
bringing more school children and more visitors to the National Assembly.
Hmm.
So at every sitting during the budget, I had also about 20 persons
Hmm.
who would write and say they want to come.
Hmm.
I allow guests from the opposition to come. You just can't show up
Hmm.
because I have an issue of providing for the security of the members.
Hmm.
Remember, you sit in close proximity, a chair's length away. Even
Hmm.
in the British Parliament, they had separated the government, the leader of the opposition,
Hmm.
from the prime minister by two swords' length. That was the distance,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I have a response. I don't know who will bring some liquid in a small bottle, might get angry, right? So I want, and you come in there with the speaker's permission. You write to the speaker, you write to the clerk will bring and said, Professor Budu would like to come uh, on Thursday, the fifth sitting of this session. I'll say yes. When my list is exhausted, I can't take anybody else, right? You may see seats empty. Let's say I gave 15 people and 10 of them didn't show up. I still have to keep those seats because I never said you have to come at 10 to 2. It's for that sitting. So once the sitting is going on, I keep your chair.
Hmm.
If you got stuck in traffic or whatever, you come, you present your ID, you get a visitor badge, I know who is sitting where they're sitting.
Mhm.
So we have implemented that, and we do have a lot of persons who um, attend the sittings and still want to attend. And then there are rules for visitors in the gallery.
Mhm.
And one commentator from the Win Party, oh, um, she, I don't have a problem calling name, the sister of the leader of the opposition.
Mhm.
She feels that we have something against her. But there are rules. And the first thing is you cannot, in the gallery, be a reporter. And her first post was scanning the assembly and saying in a live that there are so many pedophiles in here. It's the first thing she did.
Mhm.
Warned, she still continued to videos.
Mhm.
So we sent back, she puts up a post and says, the person who video me, they were videoing. No, but that's my staff.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's my staff.
Mhm.
Then she comes in eating. In the gallery, not even members of parliament can eat in the house. You can drink water.
Mhm. Wow.
We sent a message. That was an offense. And then uh, Minister McCoy, right, shouted because she was doing something and he shouted, look what this person doing. And she shouted back, you from the
Mhm.
gallery can't engage. Two wrongs don't make a right. Never did, never will.
Mhm.
So we get all this posts from her.
Mhm.
And then we have signs which saying the chairs beyond this are considered the assembly. Only members of parliament and staff of parliament can come down. She decides that don't apply to her, and she come right down to the front and spoke to one of the Win members of parliament.
Mhm.
As
Mhm.
the assembly is going on,
Mhm.
so what
You
do
know.
you do after 5 or 6 warnings? So you
Mhm.
can't come back in here until you apologize.
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
people have little remorse or regrets, they would apologize.
Yeah. Mhm.
Except you hear how bad the speaker is. So these are some of the challenges I had in the last parliament.
Mhm.
And as I
Well,
said earlier, they want to
mhm.
run your batteries down.
Yes.
But luckily, I got some wireless chargers around.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, you have been very honest. You've been very clear. And it is clear to me that you know your job very well. I think, I hope that you have educated our viewers. You certainly have educated me, right? And I thank you for coming. And I now pass you over to Shamiza. I think Shamiza, you have some questions that for
We,
the
we
speaker.
do. We do, Mr. Voodoo. Thank you for that. Our first question is coming from Mahindra
Mhm.
Hariranj. He says, Honorable Speaker, when Auditor General reports mismanagement of public funds to Parliament, what concrete enforcement mechanisms ensure accountability, recovery, and sanctions so that these findings lead to real corrective actions rather than remaining procedural?
Mahendra, thank you very, very much. And thank you, Shamisa and Professor Buru, because you started this program saying we have to educate people. And this question points to persons being, I wanted to use ignorant in the dictionary sense of the word. Ignorance means lack of information, right? So, Mahendra, the auditor and every auditor expresses an opinion. expresses an opinion. Many times, auditors' opinions and comments are taken as gospel. But in our Westminster system, we have a mechanism. So the Auditor General is expressing an opinion on the accounts of the nation for the reporting year. That report comes to the Speaker and it is put under lock and key, as we would say, until the next sitting when it's formally tabled. And once it's tabled, then it's open to the public. When it's tabled, that reports go to an independent committee called the Public Accounts Committee, which comprises members from the opposition and the government, and it's chaired by an opposition member. And what is the purpose of that committee? The purpose of that committee is to go through every paragraph of the Auditor General's comments, his findings. And when that committee meets, that committee meeting is open. The press can cover it. And sitting there is the Auditor General and his team, the Accountant General, and the Finance Secretary. So many times you would say, Professor Budu received $5 million to conduct an education program for Parliament on the 15th of October. At the 15th of January, only in our estimation, 80% of the work was done. Right? So the Clerk of Parliament will say that's not accurate. We told the Auditor General when they visited that the work will be completed by mid February, and the Auditor General presents in September before the 20th, I think. So by the time that report is on the scrutiny, it would have been completed. But somebody will pick up the Auditor General and say, we paid full money and only 85% of the work was delivered. So that is why the Public Accounts Committee meet, and the Auditor General, who is expressing opinion on the work of an accounting officer in a government agency, they get a chance to answer. At the end, if the Auditor General is absolutely correct, and if there were breaches, if there are mechanisms to be implemented to stop the bad practice from happening, those recommendations go in a report by the Public Accounts Committee to the Parliament. And then the Minister of Finance have 6 months to write a report on what corrective actions were taken. So what the Auditor General says, why we can consider it gospel, it has to be reviewed by the Independent Public Accounts Committee in the presence of the persons being accused. And then a report is made afterwards. So, Mahendra, not everything we receive and read in the Auditor General report we can definitively quote, because there could have been some extenuating circumstances. And all of that is explained when the Public Accounts Committee reviews the Auditor General report for that year. Sorry about that long answer, Professor Shamiza.
It's okay. It's all right. We'll move on to Mr. Jailal. And he says, how would you compare the degree of heckling and unruly disruptive, disruptiveness in Guyana's parliament versus those in the Caribbean islands?
I think we're neither worse nor much better. I've seen the speaker in St. Vincent shouting to her own prime minister, prime minister, prime minister, And when things get very disruly and disorderly, the speaker would stand, and that's supposed to signal every MP to take their seat and stop talking, right? So we have had a lot of similarities, you know, but as I said earlier too, it's not a church, and while you may have the heavy hand of the law on your side, you have to temper that with a lot of patience and tolerance. Might be a better word.
Definitely. And we have some concerned viewers that says, what about the minister that called the other minister foul? She should be thrown out, right? And we don't want a house of sheep in parliament. So I find those observations or those comments to be funny, but yet there's truth to it, so it's relevant. That is all the time we have for this evening. Mr. Nadir, I thank you for being here. I know you have been in politics, I feel, since I was a little girl growing up. You have been there. You're one of those faces that I remember I have great respect for. And, your history in politics speaks for itself. So I want to thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. It was truly a refreshing session. There a lot of knowledge. I'm sure a lot of people understand Parliament a little bit different from an hour ago when we started the program. I hope it helps some of us to understand a little bit better and make sense of some of the things that happen in Parliament at times. With that said, I would like to thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. I am your host, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening,
Thank you
everyone.
very much too. Thank you for
Thank you
having me.
very much,
And
Manzoor, my
happy
friend.
Holi to everyone.
Happy
Thank you.
Holi.